right, this is Jace coming to you live from the floor of New York Comic Con. I'm sure you can hear the chaos around me. Joined by my good friend, amazing, talented writer, Jackson Lanzing, to talk a little Star Trek. Jackson, how's your show been?
It's been great. What an awesome show. Any excuse to come to New York is excellent, but honestly, this is a Star Trek show.
Really?
Oh yeah, we've sold through, I think I have one copy left of Godshock, and it's Saturday, right? Like, Star Trek fans are really show up in full force at New York Comic Con for whatever reason.
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Now that we're almost into what I would say like your second season.
Sure.
I was going to ask.
Man, feels like our fifth.
Right. Well, I was going to ask about. It's funny you say that because you guys did season 5.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask about fan reaction, but you kind of already answered that. People are still digging the run. They're more engaged than ever. Return, like people that were fans of the show coming back, finding the books.
Yep. It really feels like the books have hit a certain zeitgeist with the Star Trek fandom, which was always the hope, right? You always hope that you're going to offer something new, offer something different, offer something quality and unique, and that they'll find it, right? But for a long time, Star Trek comics kind of maxed out at a certain sales threshold, and they were good comics. I've been reading Star Trek comics my whole life, right? But it's been really hard to get Star Trek TV and movie fans to come over and read the comics. And I think it's been really hard to get comics fans to come over and read some Star Trek. I think both of those things have been really difficult. And part and parcel with the way that Heather Antos has relaunched this line, with the way that Colin and I approach it, with the artists we've been able to bring in, with Chris Cantwell and the amount of quality talent that he brings in. And the sort of blood and sweat that he puts in every script, I think you can just see that the line is operating like a comics line now. We're not doing licensed Star Trek comics.
Yeah.
We're doing a comics line that happens to be Star Trek. And I think that it's been so lovely to see how much the fans across the board, people who love TOS, people who love the new shows, people who are Next Gen DS9 Voyager fans, kind of our core audience, right? People who just like the JJ movies and whatever, can find this book and dig in and really enjoy it.
I feel like all they have to do is just give one a try.
Yeah.
Because it's like you said, it's not Star Trek for the sake of Star Trek, just to have it out there. These are good comics.
Yeah, it's
like,
the hope.
separate the fact that it's Star Trek. They're just good comics at heart.
Yep.
And then, they also happen to be about this franchise we all love.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's the thing, is there's also a touch point for any Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
Are you a Lower Decks person? There's someone in here for you. Or is there a TOS person? There's someone in here for you. Are you a Strange New Worlds person? There's little details all throughout for you. Same thing with Discovery, right? All of our every issue grabs from somewhere in the canon, right? But we're not doing it for fan service. We're doing it so that so that Star Trek fans can look into the book and see themselves somewhere in it. And then, knowing that there's something for them, can then encounter all the stuff that they didn't know was for them. All the stuff that maybe they haven't encountered in Star Trek. So it becomes sort of the jumping on point for anyone. Again, which was always the objective.
Well, the other thing that's cool about it, you can't really go back and have a crossover between, the Next Generation cast. And, you know what I mean? That ship is sailed.
I mean, even at the time, it was almost impossible the way their contracts were organized.
Yeah. And super expensive.
Yeah.
But we can do that in the comics. So
it makes it wonderful,
yeah. So that kind of brings me to the other thing that I wanted to chat with you about. We have the Lore War coming next year. Lore, he was part of the story really early on.
Yes, sir, right away.
Was building. And then he kind of went away for a while, and he's been, I get the sense, making plans. So what can you tease about Lore War? Obviously, we don't want to spoil, but he's got some shenanigans that are coming.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lore War is going to be the biggest event on this line that we've ever done by a mile. It makes our previous crossover Day of Blood, which I love, look kind of small and quaint by comparison. It is a culmination of everything that we have done on Defiant and on Star Trek, and functions as a way to take Lore from hero, of the sort of shadow hero of the book in Defiant, to becoming the biggest bad Star Trek's ever seen. Our goal with this book is nothing short of to do Secret Wars for the Star Trek universe. We want to give you a full bore, full line-wide event that's going to change the status quo, that's going to invent new context, invite you into exciting new paradigms, and all of that starts and ends with Lore. So what has Lore been up to? Star Trek Annual number 2 really digs into this with Data, who has been trying to track Lora and trying to figure out what he's done ever since at the end of Day of Blood. He disappeared with all of Kales's technology, with his followers, and most importantly, with the Orb of Destruction, this powerful god-killing weapon, right? So now what has Lora done in the comics? He has taken that weapon, he has turned it into a bomb. He has taken that bomb, he has used his connections to chase our characters into this place called the Pleroma, which is effectively the source code of the Star Trek universe. It's the place where all the god-level beings come together to make sure that everything operates fine. And he's blown up a bomb in the middle of that space, killing most of those gods and effectively destroying the source code of the universe and taking control of it for himself. So what does a megalomaniacal android start to do at that point? He starts to write his own reality. He starts to make this world into what he wants. So in Star Trek 500, we gave fans a first glimpse of what that looked like, which is him iterating on the universe, right? Breaking it down and starting again, breaking it down and starting again, breaking it down and starting again, and he keeps getting bored, and it keeps getting too regimented, and he keeps trying to figure out how he's going to make this interesting for himself. And Lore War is the story of what happens when he finally figures out how to make it interesting for himself, and how our characters, under his dominion, have to find themselves again. It's very literally Secret Wars, because we wanted, like with our reframing of ideas like Gore the God Butcher, we're taking from great comics. We are, great artist theft. We are very much inspired by Infinity Gauntlet and Secret Wars and Jason Aaron's Thor run. Like, these are things that live rent-free in our heads, and we're answering those back in the comics form in order to make this feel more like comics, in order to really embrace that insane, high-budget, wild, alternate universe storytelling that comics can do, right? At the same time, I think what's really interesting about this is that while we set up for that, there's about 6 months between Lore blowing up the source code of the universe and Lore War. What kind of stories do you tell in those 6 months? Well, for Defiant, he's going to be dotting all his T's, or dotting all his I's, crossing his T's, and doing some really great intimate character work that I can't wait for people to see. I think it's Chris's best work. I genuinely think this last arc of Defiant before Lore War is like genuinely the best thing he's done in Star Trek, period. It's so good. Over in Trek, we're using it as an opportunity to try to outrun the end of the universe. The Theseus is in the Pleroma when that thing goes off, and they narrowly escape. And now they are escaping through space and time. They are trying to stay ahead of this wave that is destroying everything behind them. So, in issue 25, which just came out, we find them in fluidic space, dealing with species 8472 as the pot begins to boil, and as they all become lobsters in this fucking boiling pot that is fluidic space as Lore destroys it, right? They escape that, and this is a bit of a spoiler for anybody who hasn't read issue 25. So if you haven't read issue 25, please do turn off the podcast or mute it for a second and then turn it back on. But at the end of issue 25, we reveal that they have escaped from the frying pan into the fire as they have arrived in the Kelvin universe and are now facing down the JJ Enterprise. What that results in issue 27, issue 26, is maybe my favorite issue of the book. I really can't believe we got to do this full crossover between the Theseus and Kelvin Trek. We got Angel Hernandez back, who did Mike Johnson's Star Trek run back in the day, and we get to pay tribute to that run, which is like obviously a really seminal run and huge for us, so I can't wait to do that. I think it turned out beautifully, but it also has a hell of an ending. Issue 27 gets to be it's sort of what we call the Last Supper. It's this great, just character-oriented goodbye to all of our characters on the edge of oblivion. And then issue 28 and 29 are something totally different. And I can't wait for people to see what that is going to be, because it's something we've been warming up to. It's been on the plan since issue 1, but it's very different. And I think it's going to really surprise people. It's not going to feel like a Star Trek comic. It's going to feel like something else. So I'm really excited to see what happens on 28 and 29. And then finally 30, which will be our last issue before Lore War, is going to return us to a character that we have, like Lore, has been out of the game for a while. We're going to return to Kales, and we're going to get a look at what's been up with with him because he is not done yet. That character has more story, he has more territory, and I think we've set him up to be a crucial part of Lore War. So I'm very excited for people to see what we're going to be doing on issue 30.
And I'm excited too. I'm glad you kind of went through what's going to happen between, because I was wondering about that. The bomb's gone off. I've read 25. Like this, almost like a car chase, or one of those disaster movies where the wave is coming. Or when I was reading, it also reminded me of Crisis on Infinite Earths. When
absolutely,
and they're just trying to outrun it and just ratcheting up the tension. So that's going to continue, everybody.
Yes.
And what I will say to anybody that hasn't been reading Star Trek, you have time to catch up now before Lore War comes out.
It's true.
This is the perfect time to get caught up. These are fantastic books. And I'll also tease everybody that we're going to have Jackson and Colin and the rest of the team on later, closer to the release of the book, to talk more in depth, because I do really want to explore the differences between lore and data are so fascinating to me, and especially when you guys brought Lore back. The things that he was saying about, I want to be better, I want to be better. And what is so interesting to me is what he's doing in reiterating. He thinks he's making it better. He is that cliche of the hero of his own story.
Exactly. But, and yet, he also has this core villainous aspect to him, which is that he hates things that aren't his. He really, he hates biological beings because they aren't like him. He hates things he can't control. He hates data because he's jealous of him. Lore is all of our most petty impulses. Turned up to 11.
It's the belief that you are the master, the supreme, and everything should be just like you, and if it's not, it's inferior.
And I think finding that character and then trying to find some kind of pathos there has been an ongoing, really interesting challenge. I love Lore. I don't think anybody is ready for how fucking crazy Lore's going to get. Davida Tinto, who is drawing Lore War, relatively new artist, absolute master when it comes to lore. His body language, you can see his stuff in 500. His body language is so theatrical and expressive. He really leans all the way in on lore in a way that I can't wait for people to see. So I can't wait to do a deep dive with you on. It's going to be easier to talk about once people know more about the book.
Yeah, and
I have to be really cagey about exactly what the book is.
Right.
But I think once people understand the form and function of the story, I'm really excited to get to talk more in depth about where that all comes from and why.
Yeah. So again, everybody, now's your time. Get caught up on Star Trek. That deep dive that we're talking about that we're going to do is going to come after the first of the year, before pre-order, so you guys will all be able to pre-order Lore War. So again, now's the time. Jackson, so great to catch up with you as always.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Jace. Thank you for having me.
You can find the Comic Source podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or whichever podcasting app you prefer. Please tell all your friends about us, subscribe, and rate us. The ratings really help with our visibility and our ability to reach new listeners, especially 5-star reviews on Apple. Also be sure to visit us at lrmonline.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover all our other great pop culture content. If you want to email us, the email address is thecomicsourceblog@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/thecomicsource. Do a search for The Comic Source on Facebook and Instagram to follow us on those social platforms. All 3 spots are great places to find out when we release new episodes, as well as follow all our convention coverage. So once again, we want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.